In a world awash with tales of triumph and tragedy, love and longing, laughter and loss, certain stories rise above the rest, forging timeless pathways through the ever-shifting landscapes of human imagination. Across centuries and continents, these literary giants have survived wars and revolutions, been whispered in secret gatherings and discussed on crowded trains, shaped cultural identities, and reshaped the very notion of what it means to be human. Now, at this pivotal juncture, we invite you to join us on an odyssey, a journey through 10 essential books whose gravitational pull has never diminished. Prepare to venture into the bleak and watchful realm of 1984, where George Orwell's dystopian vision still sends chills down modern spines, warning us of the quiet perils lurking in the corridors of power. Descend then into the vast and unpredictable seas of Herman Melville's Moby-Dick, chasing a phantom white whale through a tempest of obsession, madness, and meaning. Peer through the windswept moors of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, where wild passion and piercing torment transform love into a force of nature, as untamed and elemental as any storm. Enter the shimmering, jazz-soaked world of the Roaring Twenties through Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, a cautionary elegy on the American dream and the fragile illusions it spawns. Traverse the labyrinthine streets of Dublin in James Joyce's Ulysses, where the epic trials of ancient heroes find new life in the humdrum routines of everyday existence, revealing the remarkable in the ordinary. Walk the razor's edge of ambition and damnation in the age-old pact of Dr. Faustus, forever reminding us that the price of forbidden knowledge can shake the very foundations of the soul. Journey to the heart of the Russian Revolution with Boris Pasternak's Dr. Zhivago, where love and art strive to endure amid the chaos of collapsing empires. Then, hitch a ride on a starship courtesy of Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where cosmic comedy meets philosophical inquiry in an absurd tapestry of intergalactic revelation. Step into the quiet Alabama town of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, where innocence and prejudice collide beneath the watchful gaze of justice long delayed. Finally, bask in the timeless warmth of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, a subtle, sparkling dance of manners and hearts. These 10 narratives stand as cornerstones in the grand architecture of literature. Join us now as we revisit, reinterpret, and rejoice in their eternal significance. George Orwell's 1984 is a chilling, dystopian novel set in a totalitarian society where the government, led by the party, controls every aspect of life. The story, published in 1949, explores themes of totalitarianism, surveillance, and the manipulation of truth. It presents a world where the individual is crushed under the weight of state control, and the boundaries between reality and illusion are deliberately blurred. The novel takes place in Oceania, one of 3 superstates that dominate the world. Oceania, controlled by the party, is constantly at war with either Eastasia or Eurasia, with shifting alliances that confuse the citizens. The party's leader is Big Brother, a figurehead that symbolizes the all-seeing, all-knowing authority of the regime. Though it's unclear whether Big Brother truly exists or is merely a symbol, his presence is ubiquitous. His image is on posters, coins, and telescreens, and his voice is heard from every corner of society. People are constantly reminded that they are being watched. Big Brother is watching you. Oceania's government is led by a totalitarian regime, where everything is tightly controlled by the party. The party's slogan, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength," encapsulates the paradoxes that govern the society and reflects the deep psychological manipulation that controls every aspect of life. Winston Smith, the protagonist, lives in Airstrip 1, formerly known as Britain, which is a province of Oceania. He works in the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to alter historical records to fit the party's current narrative. As part of this, Winston destroys any evidence of people who have been vaporized, erased from history and memory. The party rewrites the past continuously, so people are forced to believe that what the party says is the absolute truth. Despite his outward conformity, Winston harbors rebellious thoughts. He secretly despises the party and its totalitarian regime. The party's absolute control over every part of life, including thoughts, through newspeak, the controlled language designed to eliminate unorthodox ideas, has stifled Winston's ability to express himself. He keeps a secret journal where he writes his anti-party thoughts, a crime punishable by death. His feelings of oppression and hatred for the party grow, and he dreams of rebellion. Winston's life takes a turn when he meets Julia, a fellow party member who secretly shares his hatred of the party. They begin an illicit love affair, which becomes an act of rebellion in itself. Julia, who works in the Ministry of Love, the department responsible for the party's enforcement of law and order, is more pragmatic in her approach to rebellion. She is cynical and believes in living for the present rather than dreaming of a future revolution. Despite their differences, Winston and Julia's relationship deepens, and they find solace in their shared hatred of the party. Julia is more adept at evading the party's control, engaging in small acts of rebellion like having an affair with Winston and indulging in forbidden pleasures, such as real chocolate and wine. However, Winston's longing for something greater persists. He yearns not only for a personal connection with Julia, but for a larger rebellion that would overthrow the party's rule. The couple's rebellious thoughts are further fueled when Winston meets O'Brien, a high-ranking member of the inner party, who pretends to share Winston's hatred of the regime. O'Brien is a master manipulator, and he lures Winston into the false belief that he is part of a resistance movement called the Brotherhood, led by the elusive figure of Emmanuel Goldstein. Goldstein is the supposed leader of the opposition to the party. In his book, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism becomes Winston's guide to understanding the true nature of the party's control. Winston becomes convinced that O'Brien is the ally he's been waiting for. He believes that O'Brien has the power to bring down the party and is only pretending to be loyal to it. Winston and Julia are even introduced to a hidden room above a shop where they can meet in privacy and escape from the omnipresent surveillance of the party. However, their hopes are shattered when Winston and Julia are betrayed. The couple is arrested by the Thought Police, led by O'Brien himself. It is revealed that O'Brien had been using Winston and Julia to trap them, playing the role of a mentor to gain their trust before exposing them as traitors to the party. Winston's worst fears are realized. There is no real resistance movement, no brotherhood, and no hope for rebellion. The party controls everything, even the thoughts of its citizens. O'Brien's betrayal is complete when he reveals that he never had any intention of helping Winston and Julia. Instead, he had been watching them all along, using them as pawns in the party's unceasing battle to crush dissent. Winston is taken to the Ministry of Love, where he undergoes brutal physical and psychological torture. The party's aim is not just to punish, but to brainwash and re-educate dissenters into absolute loyalty to Big Brother. O'Brien plays a central role in Winston's re-education, subjecting him to an intense and grueling process of mental conditioning. Winston is placed in a small, windowless cell known as the holding cell, where he is tortured, starved, and deprived of all human dignity. His worst fear, however, is realized when O'Brien forces him to confront his deepest, darkest fear in the infamous Room 101. This room is where prisoners are subjected to their greatest fear, a form of psychological manipulation so extreme that it breaks the will of even the most determined rebel. For Winston, this fear is rats. He has an intense phobia of them. In the climactic scene, Winston's resistance crumbles. He betrays Julia under the pressure of the rats, screaming that he would rather she be torn apart than face the horror of the rats himself. This moment of total betrayal marks the end of Winston's rebellion and his submission to the party's absolute control. After his torture, Winston is fully reprogrammed. He no longer has any resistance to the party's control. The man who once loathed the party and dreamed of rebellion is now a loyal, subservient follower of Big Brother. He is released back into society, a broken shell of the person he once was. Winston spends his days in a state of numb acceptance. He works in the Ministry of Truth again, though this time he has completely internalized the party's lies. He no longer keeps a journal, and his thoughts are fully controlled by the party. When he encounters Julia again, their relationship has lost all meaning. The passion and rebellion they once shared have been replaced with indifference and resignation. They no longer have any love for each other, having both been thoroughly broken by the party. In the novel's final lines, Winston gazes at a portrait of Big Brother and experiences an overwhelming sense of love for him. He has become a true believer, and his last remaining trace of rebellion is gone. He has accepted that the party is all-powerful and that resistance is futile. At its core, 1984 is a novel about the consequences of totalitarianism. Orwell presents a world in which the individual is entirely subjugated to the will of the state. The party controls not only what people say and do, but also what they think. By manipulating language through newspeak and controlling history, the party makes it impossible for people to question its authority. The novel also explores the dangers of unchecked surveillance and the way in which technology can be used to oppress and control people. The omnipresent telescreens, which constantly watch and listen to the citizens of Oceania, are a symbol of how surveillance can strip away personal freedom and make privacy impossible. Another significant theme is the manipulation of truth. The party's slogan, 2 + 2 = 5, represents the idea that reality is whatever the party says it is. By controlling the past and rewriting history, the party ensures that the truth is whatever it needs it to be. This manipulation of facts and the rewriting of history is a powerful weapon in maintaining control over the populace. Finally, 1984 is a meditation on the human spirit's ability to resist oppression. Winston's initial rebellion against the party represents the strength of the human will, but in the end, Orwell shows that this will can be broken. Winston's journey is one of gradual destruction, as his body and mind are reshaped by the party into a compliant, obedient servant. 1984 is a timeless, powerful warning about the dangers of totalitarianism and the lengths to which oppressive governments will go to maintain control. Winston Smith's tragic story is a reminder of the importance of individual freedoms and the fragility of human autonomy in the face of overwhelming power. Orwell's novel remains a haunting exploration of how the manipulation of truth, the erosion of privacy, and the destruction of the individual can lead to the creation of a nightmarish, all-encompassing regime. Moby-Dick, written by Herman Melville and first published in 1851, is one of the most important and influential works in American literature. This epic novel tells the story of Captain Ahab's obsessive and dangerous pursuit of the great white whale, Moby-Dick. Set against the backdrop of a whaling voyage, the novel explores complex themes such as revenge, obsession, fate, the limits of human knowledge, and the ambiguity of good and evil. While it has often been called a sea story, Moby-Dick is also a deep philosophical meditation on humanity's struggle against nature, society, and itself. The novel begins with a now famous line, "Call me Ishmael." Ishmael, the narrator, is a young man who has decided to go to sea in order to escape the monotony of life. After finding work on a whaling ship, Ishmael joins the crew of the Pequod, a whaling vessel under the command of the mysterious and charismatic Captain Ahab. Ishmael's narration is both straightforward and reflective, giving readers an intimate look at life aboard the Pequod and the personalities of the crew, as well as philosophical musings on the nature of the sea and the human condition. Ishmael's voice, while often humorous and even playful in tone, carries a profound sense of foreboding as he recounts the tale of the doomed voyage. From the very beginning, he hints that the story will not have a happy ending, describing the sense of fate that hangs over the expedition. But his observations are rich in detail and often digress into philosophical reflections on everything from the mechanics of whaling to the metaphysical mysteries of the universe. Ishmael's journey begins in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where he signs up for a whaling voyage aboard the Pequod, a ship owned by the wealthy and enigmatic Captain Ahab. The Pequod is a whaling ship with a storied history, its name taken from a Native American tribe. The crew is a diverse group, including sailors from various nations and walks of life. Ishmael becomes particularly close with Queequeg, a harpooner from the South Sea Islands, who is initially an exotic stranger but becomes his loyal companion and friend. In the early chapters of the novel, Ishmael takes the time to explain the whaling industry in great detail, sharing with the reader the process of hunting and processing whales, the hierarchy of a whaling ship, and the various types of whales, including the elusive and legendary sperm whale. He also introduces the concept of the whale boat, the small rowboats used by the crew to harpoon whales, a practice that will be central to the narrative. As the ship sets out from Nantucket, the Pequod sails toward the South Pacific, where the crew hopes to find and kill sperm whales, the most valuable type of whale. For the first part of the journey, Ishmael is content to observe the rhythms of life aboard the ship. But the tone of the voyage shifts dramatically when Captain Ahab makes his first appearance. Captain Ahab is an imposing and mysterious figure, both charismatic and terrifying. He is introduced as a brooding, solitary man who keeps mostly to himself. As the crew gets to know him, they learn that Ahab has a singular obsession: to find and kill Moby-Dick, the great white whale that took his leg during a previous voyage. Ahab's desire for vengeance is so consuming that it eclipses everything else, including the safety and well-being of the crew. He has a large, ivory prosthetic leg that symbolizes his disfigurement, but also his unrelenting determination to pursue Moby-Dick. Ahab's obsession with Moby-Dick is not just about revenge. It is also about an existential desire to conquer nature itself. Throughout the novel, Ahab speaks in grand, almost mystical terms about the whale, describing it as a symbol of the forces of fate and chaos that govern the universe. For Ahab, Moby-Dick represents all of life's struggles, all of humanity's fears and frustrations, and he believes that killing the whale will give him power over the universe. Ahab's obsession becomes the driving force of the novel, and he slowly manipulates the crew into joining him in his quest for the whale, offering them gold for the first man who spots it. The rest of the crew, including Ishmael, are swept up in Ahab's fervor. While many of them are not as consumed by Ahab's desire for vengeance, they agree to follow him on the hunt. Ishmael, in particular, is fascinated by Ahab's intensity, but he also begins to feel the weight of the captain's obsession. As the crew sails further into the open ocean, the novel explores the psychological and philosophical consequences of Ahab's unyielding pursuit of the whale. One of the central themes of Moby-Dick is the conflict between man and nature. Ahab's desire to control nature is mirrored in his disregard for the natural rhythms of the sea and the whales he hunts. Throughout the novel, Melville explores the idea that nature is indifferent to human endeavors. The ocean is a vast, powerful, and uncontrollable force that can both give life and take it away. Moby-Dick, the whale itself, represents this force in its purest form, a creature so powerful and untamable that it can easily overpower even the most well-equipped man. Ishmael, in contrast to Ahab, represents a more balanced view of nature. While he is intrigued by the whale hunt, he is not consumed by the need to control it. He is more content to observe the natural world and is constantly questioning humanity's place in it. This contrast between Ahab and Ishmael's philosophies forms the core of the novel's thematic conflict. As Ahab becomes increasingly obsessed, the rest of the crew begins to notice the dangers of his single-minded pursuit. Ahab disregards the well-being of the men, pushing them past the limits of reason in order to chase Moby-Dick. The novel explores how this obsession begins to affect the crew, with Ahab becoming more isolated and increasingly authoritarian, while Ishmael and the others begin to question whether Ahab's quest is worth the risk. The tension reaches a boiling point when the Pequod finally encounters Moby-Dick. The first encounter is a harrowing battle, as the crew attempts to kill the whale using their small whaleboats. Moby-Dick proves to be far more powerful and intelligent than the crew could have imagined. The whale attacks the boats, killing one of the harpooners and injuring several others, but Ahab refuses to give up. He is more determined than ever to hunt the whale, and the crew, despite their growing fear, follows him. This initial confrontation is a turning point in the novel, as it sets the stage for the final, disastrous encounter. Ahab's obsession has reached its peak, and there is no turning back. His relentless pursuit of the whale has already cost the lives of several men, and yet he continues to drive the crew toward destruction. In the final chapters of the novel, Ahab and the Pequod crew have several more encounters with Moby-Dick, each one more violent and intense than the last. The whale becomes a symbol of nature's ultimate power, resisting all attempts at domination. Ahab's obsession grows more desperate, and he becomes more unstable. His single-minded pursuit of vengeance blinds him to the dangers surrounding him, and he begins to see Moby-Dick not only as a creature to be killed, but as an enemy to be vanquished in a cosmic struggle. The final confrontation with Moby-Dick is an epic and tragic battle. In a climactic scene, Ahab confronts the whale one last time. Despite his best efforts, Ahab is ultimately doomed by his obsession. The whale, as if to punish him for his hubris, drags the Pequod under, destroying the ship and killing nearly everyone aboard. Ahab is killed by the whale, his body wrapped in the ropes of the harpoon he had thrown in a final futile attempt to kill it. Moby-Dick disappears into the vastness of the ocean, leaving only Ishmael as the sole survivor of the ill-fated voyage. Ishmael, cast adrift on a small piece of the wreckage, is the only survivor. In the novel's final lines, Ishmael is rescued by the ship Rachel, and he lives to tell the tale of the Pequod's tragic voyage. Ishmael's survival is a testament to the fragility of human life and the randomness of fate. Throughout the novel, he has grappled with questions about the meaning of life, fate, and the human struggle against nature. His survival, though accidental, suggests that human life is at the mercy of forces far beyond individual control. Moby-Dick is a novel rich with themes that touch on the human condition. One of the most prominent themes is obsession. Captain Ahab's obsession with Moby-Dick leads him to sacrifice everything: his crew, his ship, his life, in the pursuit of revenge. This single-minded determination to defeat the whale represents the destructive power of obsession and how it can blind individuals to everything else in their lives. The novel also explores the idea of fate and free will. Ahab believes that he can control his fate and conquer nature by killing Moby-Dick, but ultimately, he is powerless in the face of the whale and the forces of nature. The novel asks whether humans are masters of their destinies or whether they are at the mercy of a vast, indifferent universe. The conflict between humanity and nature is another key theme. Ahab's desire to conquer nature is contrasted with Ishmael's more humble and reflective approach. The novel suggests that humans, while capable of great achievements, are ultimately small and powerless in the face of nature's vastness and unpredictability. Finally, Moby-Dick is a meditation on the limits of knowledge and understanding. Throughout the novel, Melville presents a universe full of mysteries, many of which are beyond human comprehension. Ahab's refusal to accept the unknown and his obsession with understanding the whale mirrors humanity's struggle to grasp the unknowable. Moby-Dick is a deeply philosophical and thought-provoking novel that examines the limits of human understanding, the destructive power of obsession, and humanity's place in the vast, mysterious universe. Through the story of Captain Ahab's doomed quest for vengeance, Melville explores complex themes that remain relevant to this day. The novel's tragic ending serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of obsession and the futility of trying to control forces greater than oneself. Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte's sole novel, is a tumultuous tale of passion, revenge, and the destructive power of obsession set against the bleak, windswept moors of Yorkshire, England. Published in 1847 under the pseudonym Ellis Bell, the novel has since become a classic of English literature, renowned for its complex narrative structure, deep psychological insight, and intense emotional landscape. This summary delves into the intricate web of characters and events that make Wuthering Heights a gripping and unforgettable story. The novel employs a layered narrative structure, primarily through the perspective of Mr. Lockwood, a gentleman from London who becomes the new tenant at Thrushcross Grange. Lockwood's interactions with his landlord, Heathcliff, and his visits to the neighboring estate, Wuthering Heights, spark his curiosity about the history and dynamics of these two contrasting households. Unable to sleep one night, Lockwood forces Nellie Dean, the housekeeper, to recount the intertwined histories of the Earnshaw and Linton families, thereby framing the primary narrative. The story begins with Mr. Earnshaw, the master of Wuthering Heights, returning home after a 3-year absence in India with a mysterious orphan boy, Heathcliff. Earnshaw's arrival disrupts the existing family dynamics, particularly affecting his own children, Hindley and Catherine Earnshaw. Hindley, the elder son, resents Heathcliff's presence, viewing him as an intruder and a threat to his inheritance and status within the household. Catherine, on the other hand, forms an immediate and intense bond with Heathcliff, treating him with a warmth and affection that infuriates Hindley. Heathcliff, characterized by his dark, brooding nature and wild, untamed appearance, becomes the focal point of Catherine's affections. Their deep, almost elemental connection is portrayed as a powerful, almost supernatural bond that transcends societal norms and expectations. However, Heathcliff's status as an orphan and outsider perpetuates Hindley's animosity, leading to escalating tensions and conflicts within Wuthering Heights. Following Mr. Earnshaw's death, Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights and immediately begins to undermine Heathcliff's position. He demotes Heathcliff from his status as a beloved son to that of a servant, exacerbating the latter's feelings of betrayal and fueling his desire for revenge. Hindley's degradation into alcoholism and debt further destabilizes the household, causing suffering and hardship for everyone, including his own son, Herman Earnshaw. Catherine Earnshaw, torn between her love for Heathcliff and her aspirations for social advancement, becomes increasingly conflicted. Her encounter with Edgar Linton, the refined and genteel owner of the neighboring estate, Thrushcross Grange, introduces a new dynamic. Edgar represents everything Heathcliff is not: cultured, civilized, and well-mannered. Catherine's infatuation with Edgar ignites a fierce rivalry between Heathcliff and Edgar, setting the stage for future conflicts. The tensions reach a breaking point when Catherine declares that she cannot marry Heathcliff because of his low social standing and lack of wealth. Feeling deeply hurt and spurned, Heathcliff leaves Wuthering Heights, vanishing for several years. During his absence, he transforms himself into a wealthy and enigmatic gentleman, returning with newfound status and resources to exact his vengeance on those he believes have wronged him. Upon his return, Heathcliff's presence is unsettling. He quickly sets his sights on undermining Hindley and taking control of Wuthering Heights. His calculated cruelty leads to Hindley's further downfall and the mistreatment of Herman, Hindley's son, whom Heathcliff treats with disdain and neglect. Heathcliff's obsession with Catherine becomes the driving force behind his relentless pursuit of revenge and control over both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Catherine's marriage to Edgar Linton is a strategic move to elevate her social standing, but it devastates Heathcliff. Their union, while outwardly harmonious, is fraught with emotional distance and unresolved tension. Catherine often reminisces about her wild, passionate love for Heathcliff, leading to a sense of emptiness and unfulfillment despite her comfortable life with Edgar. Catherine's deteriorating health and eventual death are pivotal moments in the novel. Stricken by a mysterious illness, she becomes a ghostly presence in both the physical and emotional realms of the story. Her death leaves Heathcliff devastated and further entrenched in his cycle of revenge, as he blames Edgar for their separation and the loss of his beloved. Heathcliff's return marks the beginning of his methodical dismantling of the lives of those around him. He manipulates and coerces Hindley into gambling, exacerbating his financial ruin and ensuring his continued dependence on Heathcliff. At the same time, Heathcliff exerts control over Thrushcross Grange by courting and marrying Edgar's sister, Isabella Linton. His marriage to Isabella is purely strategic, designed to inflict pain on Edgar and gain access to Thrushcross Grange. Isabella, naive and innocent, soon realizes the true nature of Heathcliff's cruelty. She falls deeply in love with him, only to be subjected to his abuse and manipulation, ultimately leading to her estrangement from the Linton family. This marriage serves as a catalyst for further chaos, intertwining the fates of both households and deepening the rift between the Earnshaws and the Lintons. As Heathcliff consolidates his power, the next generation becomes entwined in the cycle of vengeance and redemption. Hindley's son, Herman Earnshaw, grows up under Heathcliff's oppressive control, treated as an uneducated, rough-hewn laborer, denying him the education and refinement that could elevate his status. Concurrently, Edgar and Catherine's daughter, Cathy Linton, inherits a mixture of both her parents' refined upbringing and her father's fiery spirit. Cathy, intelligent and spirited, becomes a focal point for reconciliation and hope amidst the turmoil. Her interactions with Hareton reveal a mutual attraction and a budding relationship that challenges Heathcliff's dark influence. Cathy's desire to educate Hareton and elevate him above his social station represents a stark contrast to Heathcliff's oppressive control, hinting at the possibility of healing and redemption. Heathcliff's obsession with Catherine transcends the physical realm, manifesting in eerie, supernatural phenomena that suggest Catherine's spirit lingers over Wuthering Heights. These ghostly apparitions and Heathcliff's own tortured psyche highlight the depth of his torment and the all-consuming nature of his love and hatred. The pervasive sense of the supernatural underscores the novel's gothic elements, adding a layer of haunting intensity to the narrative. As the narrative progresses, the tensions between the characters escalate, leading to confrontations that are both emotionally charged and symbolically significant. Heathcliff's relentless pursuit of control culminates in his attempt to force Cathy and Hareton into subservient roles, mirroring the earlier dynamics with Hindley and Isabella. However, the budding relationship between Cathy and Hareton begins to undermine Heathcliff's power, as their love and mutual respect stand in stark opposition to his manipulative schemes. In a pivotal moment, Heathcliff becomes increasingly unhinged, haunted by his memories of Catherine and driven by his need for revenge. His health deteriorates as his obsession consumes him, leading to a sense of impending doom. The ghostly presence of Catherine intensifies, symbolizing the inescapable bond between them and the futility of Heathcliff's quest for vengeance. The novel reaches its emotional climax as Heathcliff's relentless pursuit of Catherine's ghost ultimately leads to his own demise. Stricken by grief and exhaustion, Heathcliff dies in Wuthering Heights, his life extinguished by the very obsession that gave it meaning. His death marks the end of the cycle of revenge and sets the stage for the possibility of healing and reconciliation. In the aftermath of Heathcliff's death, Cathy and Hareton, now free from his oppressive influence, begin to forge a new path together. Their union symbolizes the breaking of the cycle of hatred and revenge, offering a glimpse of hope and redemption for the characters who have endured so much suffering. The novel concludes with the suggestion that love and understanding can triumph over bitterness and resentment, providing a resolution that contrasts sharply with the dark, tumultuous events that preceded it. Wuthering Heights is rich with themes and symbolism that contribute to its enduring impact. The novel explores the destructive nature of obsession and revenge, as embodied by Heathcliff's relentless pursuit of those he believes have wronged him. The tumultuous relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine serves as a powerful commentary on the complexities of love and the fine line between passion and madness. The setting itself is a character in the novel, with the wild, untamed moors reflecting the inner turmoil and emotional landscapes of the characters. The contrast between Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange symbolizes the dichotomy between chaos and order, savagery and civilization, further emphasizing the novel's exploration of societal norms and personal desires. The supernatural elements, including ghostly apparitions and the lingering presence of Catherine's spirit, add a gothic dimension to the story, highlighting the character's emotional struggles and the lingering effects of past traumas. These elements also serve to blur the lines between reality and the supernatural, enhancing the novel's haunting and ethereal quality. Heathcliff, as the novel's central figure, Heathcliff is a complex character driven by deep-seated emotions and a desire for revenge. His transformation from a mistreated orphan to a wealthy, Vengeful Man underscores themes of power, class, and the corrupting influence of obsession. Heathcliff's love for Catherine is both his greatest strength and his ultimate downfall, as his inability to let go of the past leads to his self-destruction. Catherine Earnshaw. Catherine is a passionate and headstrong character torn between her love for Heathcliff and her desire for social advancement. Her internal conflict and eventual marriage to Edgar Linton reflect the societal pressures and personal ambitions that drive much of the novel's drama. Catherine's ghostly presence symbolizes the enduring impact of love and the haunting nature of unresolved emotions. Edgar Linton, representing civilization and gentility, Edgar serves as a foil to Heathcliff's wild, untamed nature. His love for Catherine is genuine but less intense, providing a contrast to the all-consuming passion between Heathcliff and Catherine. Edgar's character embodies the themes of social status and the constraints of societal expectations. Nellie Dean. As the primary narrator within the novel's frame narrative, Nellie provides a grounded perspective amidst the tumultuous events. Her role as a confidant and observer allows readers to gain insight into the motivations and emotions of the other characters, serving as a bridge between the past and present narratives. Hareton Earnshaw. Initially portrayed as rough and uneducated, Hareton undergoes significant development through his relationship with Cathy. His transformation represents the possibility of redemption and the breaking of destructive cycles, highlighting themes of growth, education, and the healing power of love. Isabella Linton. Isabella's tragic marriage to Heathcliff serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of misplaced love and the destructive potential of obsession. Her character adds depth to the novel's exploration of power dynamics and the consequences of Heathcliff's manipulative behavior. Emily Brontë employs a sophisticated narrative technique, utilizing a frame narrative that layers multiple perspectives and timelines. This structure allows for a nuanced exploration of events and characters, as Nellie Dean's recounting of past events provides depth and context to Mr. Lockwood's initial impressions. The shifting viewpoints enhance the novel's complexity, creating a rich tapestry of interconnected stories and emotional landscapes. Bronte's prose is both poetic and stark, mirroring the wild beauty of the moors and the intense emotions of the characters. Her use of vivid imagery and symbolic motifs, such as the weather and the natural landscape, reinforces the novel's themes and adds a lyrical quality to the narrative. The intense emotional depth and psychological complexity of the characters are conveyed through Bronte's meticulous attention to detail and her ability to capture the intricacies of human emotion. Since its publication, Wuthering Heights has elicited a wide range of critical responses, from acclaim for its originality and emotional intensity to criticism for its dark and often disturbing themes. Its enduring popularity is a testament to Bronte's ability to create a compelling and timeless story that resonates with readers across generations. The novel has inspired numerous adaptations in various media, including films, television series, and even operas, each interpreting Bronte's vision through different lenses. Its influence extends beyond literature, impacting discussions on topics such as gender roles, class conflict, and the nature of love and obsession. Wuthering Heights continues to be a subject of extensive academic study, with scholars exploring its themes, narrative structure, and character development. Its place in the literary canon is secured by its ability to provoke thought, evoke strong emotions, and offer profound insights into the human condition. Wuthering Heights is more than just a story of love and revenge. It is a profound exploration of the human psyche, the complexities of relationships, and the impact of societal constraints on personal desires. Emily Bronte's masterful storytelling, combined with her intricate characterizations and evocative setting, creates a novel that is as haunting as it is compelling. The tragic love story of Heathcliff and Catherine serves as a powerful reminder of the fine line between passion and destruction, while the subsequent generations represent the potential for healing and renewal. The novel's rich symbolism and emotional depth ensure that its themes remain relevant, inviting readers to reflect on the enduring questions of love, power, and redemption. In the end, Wuthering Heights stands as a testament to Emily Bronte's literary genius, offering a timeless narrative that continues to captivate and engage readers with its raw emotional power and unforgettable characters. Whether viewed through the lens of Gothic romance, psychological drama, or social critique, Wuthering Heights remains a masterpiece that speaks to the complexities of the human heart and the enduring struggle between love and vengeance. The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald's seminal work published in 1925, is one of the most celebrated novels in American literature. Set during the Roaring Twenties, the book explores themes of wealth, class, love, and the American dream. Through the lens of the narrator, Nick Carraway, the novel paints a vivid picture of the extravagant lifestyles of the East Egg elite and the tragic tale of a man named J. Gatsby, who was consumed by his longing for a woman named Daisy Buchanan. As we delve deeper into this summary, we will uncover the novel's key moments, character motivations, and underlying social commentaries. Nick Carraway, a young man from Minnesota, moves to West Egg on Long Island in the summer of 1922 to learn the bond business. He rents a modest house next to a mansion owned by the mysterious J. Gatsby. Nick is the first-person narrator of the novel, and through his eyes, we learn about the complex lives of the characters. As a newcomer to the East Egg social scene, Nick represents the reader, an outsider witnessing the decadence and moral decay of the rich. Nick is a quiet observer, reserved and reflective, and he soon becomes both a confidant and a spectator in the lives of the central characters, especially Gatsby. Despite his seemingly neutral disposition, Nick is deeply affected by the events that unfold, as he becomes entwined in Gatsby's obsession with the past and his unrequited love for Daisy. Nick's cousin, Daisy Buchanan, lives in East Egg, a more fashionable area of Long Island, with her husband, Tom Buchanan. Tom is an arrogant, wealthy, and racist man who enjoys flaunting his power and privilege. Daisy, on the other hand, is a beautiful but deeply disillusioned woman whose life of luxury and ease has come at the cost of her own happiness. Nick's initial encounter with Daisy and Tom is unsettling. Tom invites Nick to dinner at their grand estate, where Nick is introduced to the tension in their marriage. Tom's affair with a woman named Myrtle Wilson is evident, and Daisy, though emotionally distant, seems resigned to her marriage's flaws. Tom's domineering personality and his sense of entitlement are stark contrasts to Nick's more grounded and modest nature. But Nick is fascinated by the world the Buchanans inhabit. The novel's title refers to J. Gatsby, a man whose life and persona are shrouded in mystery. He is known for throwing extravagant parties at his mansion, where the wealthy and powerful come to drink, dance, and indulge in excess. However, despite the constant stream of guests, Gatsby is always elusive, rarely seen interacting with them. Through Nick's observations, we begin to uncover the truth about Gatsby's past. Gatsby, born James Gatz to poor farmers in North Dakota, reinvented himself after meeting a wealthy man named Dan Cody, who served as a mentor to him. Gatsby's ambition, fueled by his desire to escape his humble origins, led him to accumulate wealth through dubious means, including bootlegging alcohol during Prohibition. His ultimate goal, however, was to win back Daisy, the woman he loved before going off to fight in World War I. Gatsby's obsession with Daisy is central to the novel. He believes that through his wealth and status, he can reclaim the love he lost. He throws his parties in the hope that Daisy might one day attend, allowing him to rekindle their romance. This desire for a perfect, idealized version of the past consumes him and ultimately leads to his downfall. Gatsby and Daisy met in Louisville, Kentucky, before Gatsby was sent off to war. At the time, Daisy was a young, beautiful debutante, and Gatsby was a poor soldier. Their love was intense, but Daisy, overwhelmed by Gatsby's lack of wealth, chose to marry Tom Buchanan, who could offer her a life of luxury and security. Daisy's decision to marry Tom is pivotal. It represents her choosing the material world over idealistic love, a decision she later regrets. Gatsby never got over Daisy, and upon his return from the war, dedicated his life to accumulating wealth in the hopes that he would be worthy of her. He bought his mansion in West Egg through lavish parties, and became a mysterious figure who captured the imagination of the upper class, all in the hopes that Daisy would notice him again. Nick becomes aware of Gatsby's love for Daisy after a chance meeting between the two. Gatsby invites Daisy to his home, and they rekindle their affair, though Daisy is torn between Gatsby and her husband, Tom. Gatsby is convinced that Daisy will leave Tom for him, and that they can pick up their love where it left off. But this illusion is shattered when Daisy cannot bring herself to abandon her life with Tom. Tom soon becomes aware of Gatsby's intentions toward Daisy, and the tension between the two men escalates. Tom, feeling threatened by Gatsby's wealth and the idea that his wife might leave him, confronts Gatsby in an intense argument. Tom exposes Gatsby's criminal activities, revealing the dark side of his wealth and undermining his status as a self-made man. Gatsby's claim that he can recreate the past is challenged by Tom's assertion that Daisy belongs to him and always will. Daisy, torn between the two men, ultimately chooses to stay with Tom, choosing the stability and security of her marriage over the idealism that Gatsby offers. The conflict between Gatsby and Tom symbolizes the tension between old money, Tom, and new money, Gatsby, and it highlights the class divisions that permeate the world of the novel. Tom's wealth is inherited, while Gatsby's is self-made, but the social distinction between the two is stark. Gatsby, despite his wealth, is never truly accepted into the old money world of East Egg. Tom, on the other hand, represents the entrenched power and privilege that Gatsby can never hope to attain. Gatsby's pursuit of Daisy ultimately leads to his tragic death. After a confrontation between Tom and Gatsby, Daisy returns to Tom, and Gatsby is left to hold on to his hope that she will eventually leave her husband. But Daisy does not return to him. The novel's climax occurs when Daisy accidentally runs over Tom's mistress, Myrtle Wilson, with Gatsby's car. Tom's affair with Myrtle had already been a source of tension between the two men, but now Gatsby's car is implicated in her death. Myrtle's husband, George Wilson, is devastated by her death. He is led to believe that Gatsby was both the lover and the killer of his wife. In his grief and rage, George tracks down Gatsby at his mansion, where Gatsby is lounging by the pool. He shoots Gatsby dead and then turns the gun on himself, committing suicide. The novel ends with Gatsby's death, and we are left to reflect on the futility of his dream and the tragic consequences of his obsessive pursuit of an idealized past. At its core, The Great Gatsby is a critique of the American dream. The novel exposes the illusion that anyone, regardless of their background, can achieve success and happiness through hard work and determination. Gatsby's rise to wealth is built on dishonesty and crime, and his dream of rekindling his love with Daisy is equally unrealistic. The novel critiques the moral decay beneath the glittering surface of wealth and success, showing how the pursuit of material gain can lead to corruption, disillusionment, and ultimately destruction. Nick Carraway's narrative journey also reflects this disillusionment. By the end of the novel, Nick returns to the Midwest, leaving behind the world of excess and moral decay that he encountered on Long Island. He is repulsed by the people he met, including Daisy and Tom, who are revealed to be careless, selfish, and morally bankrupt. In the end, Nick is left with a sense of disillusionment about the American dream and the emptiness of the world he once admired. The Great Gatsby is a powerful exploration of the American dream, love, and the corrupting influence of wealth. Through the tragic story of J. Gatsby, Fitzgerald highlights the inherent flaws in the pursuit of success and the hollow nature of the American dream. Gatsby's dream is doomed from the start because it is based on an idealized vision of the past, and his inability to accept the present leads to his ultimate demise. The novel's conclusion is somber, as it reflects the emptiness and disillusionment that many of the characters face, despite their wealth and social status. Fitzgerald's portrayal of the Jazz Age and the moral decay of society during the 1920s remains relevant to this day. The Great Gatsby serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of obsession, materialism, and the false promises of the American dream. Ultimately, the novel asks us to question the true cost of success and whether the dream of a better life is worth pursuing at all. Ulysses by James Joyce is a modernist masterpiece that was first published in 1922. Its intricate narrative explores the complexities of life, human consciousness, and identity within the setting of a single day, June 16, 1904, in Dublin, Ireland. The novel draws heavily on classical mythology, particularly Homer's Odyssey, and intertwines it with the modern experiences of its characters. Through stream of consciousness narration, shifting perspectives, and a variety of literary techniques, Ulysses presents an unparalleled exploration of the human condition. The novel is divided into 18 episodes, each exploring the lives of the main characters, Leopold Bloom, Stephen Dedalus, and Molly Bloom, as they navigate their personal journeys, both literal and metaphorical. The narrative structure, filled with rich allusions and experimental prose, has made Ulysses one of the most influential yet challenging novels in the Western literary canon. The novel begins with Stephen Dedalus, the protagonist of Joyce's earlier work, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, waking up in a tower in Dublin. Stephen is a teacher at a school, but feels disconnected from society and his friends. He shares the tower with Buck Mulligan, a medical student, and Haynes, an Englishman who is staying with them. Stephen's alienation from the world is evident in his interactions with Mulligan, who mocks him and speaks to him with a lack of respect. Stephen's thoughts are preoccupied with his mother's recent death, and his strained relationship with his father, Simon Dedalus, is hinted at. As he walks through Dublin, Stephen's intellectual pursuits and his frustration with society come to the forefront. His philosophical musings, combined with his sense of estrangement, set the tone for the novel's exploration of identity, history, and self-realization. The second episode shifts to Gertie McDowell, a young woman on the beach at Sandymount Strand. She is the subject of Leopold Bloom's gaze as he watches her from a distance. Gertie is a beautiful, modest woman, and her interactions with Bloom serve as a reflection of his own desires and frustrations. Bloom is a middle-aged Jewish man, and his attention to Gertie reveals his longing for connection and his fantasies of youthful beauty. While Gertie remains unaware of Bloom's observation, the narrative delves into Bloom's thoughts and inner turmoil. He is a loving but distant husband to Molly Bloom, who is an essential part of his life. The episode is filled with complex layers of social observation, desire, and identity, and Gertie's role as a symbol of unattainable beauty and idealized femininity is clear. The episode is a poignant exploration of Bloom's sexual frustration, voyeurism, and the realities of middle-aged life. In this episode, Stephen Dedalus continues his walk through Dublin. As he reflects on the meaning of life and his own identity, the narrative shifts to a stream of consciousness style, showcasing his intellectual musings and frustrations. The episode's title, Proteus, refers to the shape-shifting Greek god, symbolizing Stephen's attempts to find meaning and understanding in a world that constantly changes. His thoughts wander through various concepts of identity, religion, and history, revealing his deep existential struggles. Stephen's reflections are fragmented, mirroring the disjointedness of his inner world. He experiences moments of clarity, but is often lost in confusion and doubt. As he walks, he contemplates his strained relationships with others, including Mulligan, Haynes, and his family. This episode marks a crucial point in Stephen's journey, as his intellectual pursuits clash with his sense of alienation and disillusionment. This episode introduces a significant intellectual discussion that takes place in the National Library of Ireland. Stephen Dedalus engages in a heated conversation with a group of Dublin's literary figures, including John Eglinton, a fellow intellectual. The topic of the discussion is Shakespeare's work, and Stephen's arguments center on the idea that Shakespeare's plays reveal a deep sense of personal experience and emotional complexity. Throughout the conversation, Stephen asserts his own intellectual authority, but there is an underlying sense of frustration. His insights are met with skepticism, and his isolation as an artist becomes more apparent. The episode's title, Scylla and Charybdis, references two mythical monsters from the Odyssey, symbolizing the dangers and struggles Stephen faces as he attempts to assert his own identity in a world that refuses to acknowledge him fully. Leopold Bloom, the novel's central character, is introduced more fully in this episode. He is a sensitive, introspective man, and the episode delves into his thoughts as he moves through Dublin. Bloom's day is filled with routine tasks, such as attending a funeral and running errands, but his thoughts often wander, reflecting his complex inner life. The episode explores Bloom's alienation from the world around him, as well as his relationship with his wife, Molly. Bloom's struggle to connect with others is juxtaposed against his desires, memories, and fantasies. The title Lotus Eaters refers to the mythical creatures in the Odyssey who live in a dreamlike state, and it mirrors Bloom's sense of disconnection and longing for a life that feels more meaningful and satisfying. The sixth episode of Ulysses takes place during a funeral procession through Dublin. Bloom, along with several other characters, attends the funeral of a man named Paddy Dignam. As they walk to the cemetery, the characters engage in conversations about death, life, and religion, while Bloom reflects on the loss of his son, Rudy, who died at a young age. The episode is deeply introspective, exploring Bloom's complex emotions surrounding death, grief, and the passage of time. As Bloom's thoughts wander, the narrative delves into his inner life, revealing his fears, regrets, and his inability to find closure. The funeral procession, a somber event, is contrasted with the colorful and vibrant life of Dublin, symbolizing the tension between life and death, the real and the imagined. In this episode, the narrative shifts to a more fragmented, chaotic style, mirroring the disarray of the political and social world of Dublin. Leopold Bloom is now deeply involved in the political discourse of the day, as he visits a newspaper office and interacts with several figures in the city's press. The episode's title, Ulysses, references the god of the winds, symbolizing the chaos and instability of the political landscape. As Bloom navigates the political discourse, his thoughts remain rooted in his personal life and emotions. The narrative becomes increasingly experimental, employing techniques such as newspaper-style headlines and fragmented dialogue to highlight the confusion and disorder that permeates Bloom's world. Bloom's internal conflict, his desire to connect with others, and his yearning for meaning become more apparent as the episode progresses. In this episode, Bloom continues his journey through Dublin, making his way through various locations in the city. As he walks, his thoughts wander between mundane observations and more profound musings about the human condition, memory, and his own life. Bloom's role as an outsider is further explored, as he reflects on his status as a Jewish man in a predominantly Catholic society. Throughout the episode, Bloom's feelings of alienation intensify. His relationship with his wife, Molly, is shown to be distant and complicated, and he is increasingly aware of the social divides that separate him from others. The title, The Lestrygonians, refers to another group of monsters in the Odyssey, symbolizing the dangers and obstacles Bloom faces in his quest for self-understanding. This episode is set in a restaurant where Bloom, Stephen, and other characters interact. The conversation turns to discussions about literature, language, and identity. Stephen's thoughts become more introspective, and he reflects on the struggles and obstacles he faces in his artistic journey. The episode's central theme is the clash between the intellectual pursuits of Stephen and the more grounded, practical concerns of Bloom. As the two men exchange ideas, their respective worlds, Stephen's artistic, intellectual sphere and Bloom's more everyday concerns, are explored, with both characters revealing their vulnerabilities and desires. The episode is a moment of intellectual and emotional confrontation between the two men. The episode The Sirens takes place in a nightclub where music, dancing, and flirtation take center stage. The narrative is filled with lyrical and poetic language, drawing attention to the seductive power of music, sound, and human attraction. Bloom's attraction to the performers and the atmosphere of the nightclub is depicted in vivid detail. Bloom's encounter with the seductive atmosphere of the nightclub highlights his inner conflict and desire for connection. At the same time, his thoughts turn to his wife, Molly, and his own unfulfilled desires. The episode is a reflection on the power of sensuality, music, and the human longing for connection, set against the backdrop of Dublin's nightlife. Ulysses is a deeply layered and complex novel that examines the human experience through the eyes of its central characters, Leopold Bloom and Stephen Dedalus. Each episode of the novel offers a different perspective on life, identity, and human consciousness. From the intellectual musings of Stephen to the emotional and existential struggles of Bloom, the novel weaves a tapestry of themes that explore the self, the city, and the passage of time. The narrative structure, with its shifting points of view and experimental prose, mirrors the fragmented and chaotic nature of the modern world. Joyce's use of symbolism, illusion, and stream of consciousness techniques forces readers to engage with the text on a deeper level, exploring the nuances of each character's inner world. Ultimately, Ulysses is a reflection on the disillusionment and fragmentation of modern life, where the pursuit of meaning and connection often seems futile, but the search for understanding continues. Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann is a masterful reinterpretation of the Faust legend, reimagined within the context of German culture and politics leading up to World War II. This complex, philosophical novel follows the life of Adrian Leverkühn, a brilliant composer who, in a pact reminiscent of Faust's deal with the devil, sacrifices his soul for creative genius. Set against the backdrop of a decaying Germany, Mann's novel weaves elements of mythology, music, and philosophy into a deeply tragic exploration of genius, corruption, and the moral collapse of a nation. The novel begins with Serenus Zeitblom, a retired schoolteacher and friend of Adrian Leverkühn, recounting the life and work of Leverkühn from childhood through his rise to fame and eventual decline. Narrating with reverence and sorrow, Zeitblom is a conservative, pious man who contrasts sharply with the radical, tormented genius of Leverkühn. Through Zeitblom's words, Mann tells the story of Leverkühn's tragic life, depicting him as both a product of and a metaphor for a Germany teetering on the brink of catastrophe. Adrian is born in 1885 in the small town of Kaiserslautern, Germany, to a family with a rural background. As a young boy, he displays an extraordinary intellectual aptitude, but is quiet, reserved, and physically delicate. His father, an eccentric, somewhat skeptical man, encourages his son's education, while his mother's deep religiosity subtly influences Adrian's psyche. From an early age, Adrian demonstrates an acute sensitivity and aloofness, traits that separate him from others and foreshadow his isolation. Adrian enrolls in the University of Halle to study theology, not out of religious conviction, but rather an intellectual curiosity about theology's logical structure. His true passion, however, lies in music. He begins studying music theory with Wendell Kretschmer, a local organist and eccentric lecturer who becomes an important influence. Kretschmer introduces Adrian to complex and modern musical forms, which fascinate him and awaken his desire to compose revolutionary music. During his studies, Adrian's life takes a dark turn when he encounters Esmeralda, a mysterious prostitute in a seedy part of town. The encounter becomes pivotal. Esmeralda infects Adrian with syphilis, a disease that symbolizes both his moral degradation and his pact with the demonic forces that he believes will grant him creative genius. The syphilis progressively damages his body and mind, ultimately contributing to his madness. Adrian, understanding the illness's devastating effects, does not seek a cure, believing that his affliction is the price of his extraordinary artistic vision. Following this encounter, Adrian withdraws from society, becoming increasingly isolated and fixated on his work. He moves to a secluded farmhouse where he devotes himself entirely to composition. In this isolation, Adrian begins to believe that he has made a Faustian pact with the devil. He imagines, or perhaps truly encounters, a diabolical figure who promises him 24 years of unparalleled creative genius in exchange for his soul. Adrian's conversations with the devil are some of the novel's most chilling and profound passages, exploring themes of artistic ambition, moral decay, and the price of genius. The devil offers him not only technical mastery, but also the ability to compose in ways that defy the limits of human perception, allowing him to create music that transcends traditional boundaries. Adrian's pact grants him the ability to push music into new and challenging realms, but it also condemns him to a life devoid of personal happiness or emotional fulfillment. His works become increasingly experimental and radical, earning him both admiration and criticism from the public. However, his compositions lack warmth and humanity, embodying a cold, mathematical beauty rather than genuine emotion. His magnum opus, The Apocalypse, is a monumental work inspired by the Book of Revelation, foreshadowing the chaos and destruction that will soon engulf Germany. This piece shocks audiences with its dissonance, structure, and apocalyptic themes, reflecting Adrian's inner torment and the dark forces driving him. Adrian's relationships are tragic, marked by distance, obsession, and a profound inability to connect with others. He has close ties with a small circle of friends, including Zeitblum and Rudi Schwarzenegger, a passionate and talented violinist who idolizes Adrian. However, Adrian's detachment and cold intellectualism prevent him from forming meaningful connections. Schwarzenegger, in particular, suffers from Adrian's emotional distance. When Schwarzenegger eventually falls in love with Marie Godot, a young woman, Adrian becomes irrationally jealous, revealing a possessive and vindictive side of his character. In a fit of jealousy and perhaps influenced by his pact, Adrian curses their relationship, and shortly afterward, Schwarzenegger dies in a tragic accident. Adrian's cold reaction to his friend's death shocks those around him and confirms the extent to which he has become emotionally detached. Adrian's family suffers greatly as well. His younger sister, Nepomuk or Nepomuk Schneidwein, is devoted to him, seeing him as an otherworldly figure. However, even she cannot break through his detachment. His mother, a deeply religious woman, worries about his soul, but can only watch helplessly as Adrian spirals further into madness and despair. Eventually, Nepomuk also dies, an event that devastates the family and further isolates Adrian. Adrian's life and work are increasingly influenced by Germany's political landscape. Mann's novel parallels Adrian's inner turmoil with the rise of fascism in Germany, depicting a nation seduced by its own dark ideals. Adrian's own creative destruction, his pact with the devil, and his inability to feel empathy mirror the moral collapse of German society under Nazism. He becomes a symbol of Germany's intellectual and moral decline, seduced by power and blinded by pride, mirroring the country's descent into fanaticism and war. As Adrian's health deteriorates from the effects of syphilis, he becomes haunted by visions, including the reappearance of the devil who taunts him with his fate. In his final days, Adrian suffers a mental breakdown, experiencing both physical and psychological torment. He publicly confesses his pact with the devil to his friends and colleagues, a scene that is both heartbreaking and surreal. This confession is Adrian's attempt at redemption, but it comes too late. His madness is irreversible, and he collapses in a state of utter despair. The novel's climax occurs as Adrian's health and mind unravel completely. He loses the ability to compose, sinking into paralysis and madness, haunted by the consequences of his choices. He spends his last days in a mental institution where he is tended to by those who once admired him, now horrified by his ruin. Adrian's death is slow and agonizing, a final punishment for his pact and his moral and artistic transgressions. Mann's reinterpretation of the Faust legend examines the moral cost of artistic genius. Adrian's pact with the devil symbolizes the artist's struggle between ethical boundaries and the desire to transcend human limitations. Mann suggests that true genius often comes at a terrible cost, not only to the artist but also to those around them. Adrian's brilliance alienates him from humanity, leaving him emotionally barren and morally compromised. His deal with the devil is not a literal bargain, but a metaphor for the dangers of unchecked ambition and the belief that greatness justifies suffering. Adrian's isolation is both self-imposed and the result of his syphilitic madness, which fuels his artistic drive while destroying his emotional life. His detachment from society and inability to form meaningful relationships, reflect the loneliness that often accompanies intellectual and artistic pursuits. Mann uses Adrian's seclusion to explore the loneliness that genius can bring and to suggest that without love or empathy, even the most brilliant mind is doomed to spiritual decay. Through Adrian's life, Mann parallels the rise of fascism in Germany. Adrian's pact with the devil mirrors Germany's own pact with authoritarianism, which promised order and strength but ultimately led to destruction. Adrian's obsession with power and disregard for moral responsibility echo the ideological zeal and moral bankruptcy of the Nazi regime. Mann's narrative condemns both Adrian and Germany as they become seduced by destructive forces that ultimately consume them. The novel serves as a warning against the dangers of hubris and the allure of power without empathy. Music and art in Dr. Faustus are both Adrian's salvation and his doom. His compositions push the boundaries of music, exploring dissonance and complexity that reflect his inner torment and societal decay. Yet this artistic drive isolates him, leading to his ultimate ruin. Mann uses Adrian's relationship with music to question whether art can redeem or only deepen human suffering. For Adrian, art becomes a source of both divine inspiration and demonic possession, an expression of both his highest ideals and his most depraved impulses. The devil in Dr. Faustus is not a simple antagonist, but a reflection of Adrian's own despair and moral decay. His appearances are eerie and intellectually compelling, serving as a personification of Adrian's fears and insecurities. The Devil's Pact with Adrian is a metaphor for the artist's willingness to embrace suffering and sacrifice for greatness, but it also exposes the emptiness at the heart of Adrian's ambition. Mann's devil is a symbol of the existential dread that accompanies the human condition, a figure that mocks the idea of transcendence and exposes the futility of seeking meaning in a morally corrupt world. Adrian's physical decline from syphilis mirrors his moral and spiritual decay, symbolizing the consequences of living without empathy or ethical restraint. His relationship with Esmeralda and his willingness to embrace his disease highlight his self-destructive nature, suggesting that even the most gifted individuals are vulnerable to corruption. Mann uses Adrian's illness to emphasize the fragility of the human spirit, illustrating that genius without humanity leads only to ruin. Dr. Faustus is a profound and haunting meditation on the nature of genius, morality, and human suffering. Through Adrian Leverkun's tragic life, Mann explores the dangers of unchecked ambition, the allure of authoritarianism, and the isolation that often accompanies great talent. Adrian's pact with the devil symbolizes Germany's own moral collapse, and his downfall serves as a grim reminder of the price of sacrificing empathy for power. Mann's novel is as much a reflection on Germany's political turmoil as it is an exploration of the human condition, capturing the despair and disillusionment of an entire generation scarred by war and authoritarianism. Dr. Faustus remains one of Mann's most challenging and insightful works, offering a chilling portrayal of a society seduced by darkness and a tragic portrait of an artist destroyed by his own brilliance. Through Zeitblom's mournful narration, Mann invites readers to consider the true cost of greatness and the ethical responsibility of those who seek to create, leaving us with an unforgettable meditation on the fragile line between genius and madness. Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak is a sweeping novel that combines the intimate story of a poet doctor's life with the epic upheaval of Russian society, during the tumultuous years of the Russian Revolution and Civil War. First published in 1957, this masterpiece explores the complex intersections of personal and political struggles through the lens of its sensitive, introspective protagonist, Yuri Zhivago. The novel is both a love story and a philosophical reflection on the nature of individuality, fate, and art amidst societal chaos, and it delves into themes of loss, loyalty, and the cost of human resilience. The story opens in the early 1900s, with young Yuri Zhivago attending his mother's funeral. Orphaned from a young age, Yuri is raised by family friends, the Gromykos. He grows up alongside Tanya Gromyko, who becomes his lifelong friend and eventual wife. Yuri, a thoughtful and introspective young man, dreams of a life in medicine and poetry, and he soon achieves both. He becomes a doctor and a poet, constantly searching for deeper meaning in life. As Yuri and Tanya grow up together, Russia itself is on the brink of change. The country is embroiled in war and political unrest as revolution looms, setting the stage for the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the Civil War that follows. Yuri marries Tanya, and they build a life together in Moscow, where he works as a doctor and nurtures his poetic soul amidst the challenging times. They have a son, Sasha, and try to make a life amidst the chaos and shortages brought on by World War I. However, Yuri's life changes dramatically when he meets Laura Antipova, a woman who will come to define his fate and shape the rest of his life. Laura is a beautiful and resilient woman who has endured her own hardships. As a teenager, she is seduced by Viktor Komarovsky, a charming but corrupt older man who becomes her lover and mentor. Feeling trapped by Komarovsky's influence, Laura attempts to take control of her life by marrying Pasha Antipov, a dedicated revolutionary with high ideals. Pasha, who later adopts the name Strelnikov, becomes one of the most feared figures in the revolution. He represents the harsh, radical aspect of the revolutionary fervor that sweeps Russia, while Laura represents a more humane, vulnerable side to the upheaval. Their lives intersect with Yuri's during the tumultuous years of World War I. As a physician, Yuri is called to the front, where he works tirelessly to save lives amidst horrific conditions. It is here in a military hospital that he meets Laura, who is serving as a nurse. They form an intense, quiet connection, one that is based on shared suffering and mutual empathy. Yuri is captivated by Laura's strength, her compassion, and her enigmatic beauty. Though both are married to other people, Yuri and Laura share a profound bond that transcends the harsh realities around them. After the war, Yuri returns to Moscow, where the impact of the October Revolution has left society in shambles. The Bolshevik regime seizes property, redistributes resources, and controls nearly every aspect of life. Yuri, Tanya, and Sasha struggle to survive in a Moscow stripped of food and basic necessities. Yuri's poetry and art are deemed dangerous in this new world, where individuality and free expression are seen as threats to the state's collectivist ideals. Feeling increasingly disillusioned, he decides to take his family to the countryside, seeking a simpler life where they can grow food and live independently. Yuri and his family find refuge at the Gromyko estate in Varakino, a small village far from the control of the Soviet authorities. Life here is harsh, but they find solace in the isolation and the beauty of the landscape. Yuri is inspired by the natural world, using it as a source of artistic and spiritual renewal. Yet, even in this remote place, they cannot escape the relentless grip of the Soviet state. They are compelled to live within the boundaries set by the authorities, who continue to monitor their lives. While at Verikino, Yuri and Lara's paths cross again. Lara is living in the nearby town of Uriatin, working as a nurse to support herself and her daughter, Katinka, after the apparent disappearance of her husband, Pasha. Yuri and Lara's reunion reignites their unspoken love, and they begin a passionate yet tumultuous affair. Their love offers a temporary escape from the suffering and restrictions imposed by the revolution, a private world where they can be free to express themselves fully. Their relationship becomes a sanctuary of beauty and creativity amidst the relentless hardships they face, providing Yuri with inspiration for his poetry. However, their happiness is short-lived. As political tensions escalate, Yuri is forcibly conscripted by the Red Army, a group of Bolshevik guerrillas who need a doctor. Taken away from Lara and his family, Yuri endures months of hardship as he is dragged across Russia with the army. He experiences the full brutality of the Civil War and the crushing uniformity demanded by the new regime. The war transforms Yuri, leaving him exhausted, spiritually depleted, and disillusioned. The dream of a new, egalitarian society promised by the revolution has been perverted into a nightmare of cruelty and repression. Eventually, Yuri escapes from the Red Army and returns to Uriatin, where he reconnects with Lara. Both have suffered deeply during the war, but they find comfort in each other's presence. However, their reunion is haunted by the inevitability of separation. The Soviet state considers Lara's association with Pasha, now known as the radical Strelnikov, to be a threat, and Yuri is warned that they are both in danger. Komarovsky, who is now a high-ranking Soviet official, reappears and offers to help them escape to the Far East. Yuri, however, declines, unwilling to abandon his homeland despite the risks. Yuri and Lara spend a final, poignant night together in Verikino, surrounded by the frozen beauty of the Russian winter. Their time together is filled with both love and sorrow, as they are aware that this is likely their last meeting. In the morning, Yuri insists that Lara accept Komarovsky's offer for the sake of her safety. Heartbroken, Lara leaves, taking her daughter Katinka with her, while Yuri remains behind, choosing to face whatever fate awaits him. In the aftermath, Yuri returns to Moscow, where he tries to resume his former life. However, the world has changed irrevocably. He becomes increasingly isolated and disillusioned, struggling to find meaning in a society that values obedience over creativity. Although he still writes poetry, he cannot publish his work, as his introspective themes do not align with the state's propagandistic vision. His health deteriorates, and he becomes estranged from his family and friends, haunted by memories of Lara and the life they could have had. Tragically, Yuri dies alone on a Moscow street, succumbing to a heart attack. His death is a quiet end for a man who once dreamed of changing the world through art and healing. In his final moments, he is surrounded not by loved ones, but by strangers who barely notice his passing. However, his legacy endures through his poetry, which lives on as a testament to his spirit and his belief in beauty and individuality. Yuri and Lara's love is one of the central themes of Dr. Zhivago, and it serves as a symbol of beauty and individuality in a world that seeks to crush both. Their relationship, though brief and filled with hardship, offers them a reprieve from the oppressive realities they face. Through their love, they create a world where they can be free to express themselves, to find joy, and to dream. This love, like Yuri's poetry, becomes a form of resistance against the brutal forces that seek to erase their humanity. Yuri's introspective, artistic nature places him at odds with the collectivist ideals of the Soviet state, which demands conformity and obedience. Throughout the novel, Yuri's struggle to maintain his individuality is met with relentless opposition. The Soviet regime views his poetry and art as subversive, a threat to the uniformity it enforces. Pasternak uses Yuri's journey to illustrate the cost of nonconformity in a society that prioritizes the collective over the individual, ultimately suggesting that true freedom can only exist within the individual soul. The Russian Revolution is depicted as a grand ideal corrupted by violence, oppression, and cruelty. What began as a promise of equality and freedom turns into a nightmare of totalitarianism, where the state exerts absolute control over every aspect of life. Through Yuri's experiences, Pasternak critiques the revolution's failure to deliver on its promises, exposing how it instead brings suffering, disillusionment, and the suppression of human potential. Characters like Strelnikov represent the zeal and fanaticism that lead to moral decay, while Yuri's disillusionment embodies the loss of hope that many felt as the revolution's ideals gave way to tyranny. Yuri's life is marked by forces beyond his control, from his orphan childhood to his tragic love with Lara. Throughout the novel, Pasternak suggests that individuals are subject to the whims of history, with fate often dictating their lives despite their best intentions. However, Yuri's ability to find moments of joy, beauty, and meaning in small, personal acts, such as his poetry and his love for Lara, suggests that people can retain some measure of control over their lives, even in the face of overwhelming forces. Nature is a recurring motif in Dr. Zhivago, serving as a source of inspiration and renewal for Yuri. The Russian landscape, with its seasons, storms, and beauty, reflects the inner life of the characters. The winters of Varekino represent both the harshness of their reality and the quiet sanctuary it provides. For Yuri, nature is a reminder of the eternal, the beautiful, and the spiritual elements of life that cannot be taken away by any political regime. Dr. Zhivago is a novel that speaks to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity, tragedy, and societal chaos. Boris Pasternak's portrayal of Yuri Zhivago is both a celebration of individuality and a lamentation of the forces that seek to suppress it. The novel's profound themes of love, art, freedom, and resilience resonate beyond the Russian context, offering universal insights into the human condition. Though Yuri's life ends in tragedy, his poetry and his memory live on, symbolizing the enduring power of the individual spirit in even the darkest times. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams is a wildly imaginative science fiction adventure and a satire on human nature, technology, and the absurdity of life itself. First published in 1979, the novel begins a humorous and surreal journey that quickly transcends Earth's familiar landscapes, inviting readers into the vast, bizarre, and thoroughly confusing world of intergalactic hitchhiking. The book is the first in a 5-part trilogy and has captivated audiences with its wit, cleverness, and iconic characters. Packed with memorable phrases like "Don't panic" and 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. This novel explores the oddities of existence with both irreverence and depth. The story opens with Arthur Dent, a regular, slightly neurotic Englishman who is in the middle of a bad morning. Arthur wakes to find bulldozers at his front door, prepared to demolish his house to make way for a bypass. Distraught and baffled by this sudden upheaval, he lies down in front of the bulldozer, refusing to let them proceed. As he argues with the workers, his friend Ford Prefect arrives, insisting that Arthur has bigger concerns than his soon-to-be demolished house. Ford Prefect is not the typical human that Arthur believes him to be. He is, in fact, an alien from a small planet in the vicinity of Betelgeuse and a field researcher for a publication, known as the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Ford informs Arthur that Earth is about to be destroyed to make way for a hyperspace bypass, a cosmic highway project approved by a bureaucratic galactic government. As the massive Vogon construction fleet looms in Earth's orbit, Ford drags a confused Arthur into an adventure that will lead them far beyond his now irrelevant home. With the help of his electronic thumb, a device that allows aliens and humans alike to hitch rides on passing spaceships, Ford manages to hitch a lift for himself and Arthur aboard the very ship that has come to destroy Earth. The ship belongs to the Vogons, a highly bureaucratic and unpleasant race of aliens known for their sadistic poetry. Vogon poetry is considered one of the worst in the universe, so much so that it's used as a form of torture. As Arthur tries to grasp what has happened, Ford explains some essential survival tips for hitchhiking in space and gives Arthur a copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, an electronic book with the words "Don't Panic" written on the cover in large, comforting letters. Unfortunately, their joyride on the Vogon ship is short-lived. When they are caught, the Vogons subject them to a torturous poetry recital before unceremoniously ejecting them into space. Left floating in the vacuum, they are saved in the nick of time by the Heart of Gold, a sleek, technologically advanced spaceship with an unusual feature: the infinite improbability drive. This drive allows the ship to pass through every conceivable point in the universe by harnessing the improbability of various events, resulting in a series of bizarre, reality-bending experiences for those on board. Aboard the Heart of Gold, Arthur and Ford meet a host of peculiar characters. Chief among them is Zaphod Beeblebrox, Ford's semi-cousin and a two-headed, three-armed, flamboyant ex-president of the galaxy. Zaphod is a reckless, egotistical character with a penchant for making life exciting, often at the expense of logic or responsibility. He has stolen the Heart of Gold for reasons that even he cannot fully remember, due to tampering with his own brain. Accompanying him is Trillian, the ship's only other human occupant, whom Arthur vaguely remembers meeting at a party on Earth. Originally named Tricia McMillan, Trillian left Earth with Zaphod just before it was destroyed. Also aboard is Marvin the paranoid android, a perpetually depressed robot who provides a darkly comic perspective on life. Designed with a genuine people personality, Marvin is prone to existential despair and sarcastic observations about the futility of existence. Though he is a highly advanced robot, his depressive demeanor and low opinion of organic life make him one of the most memorable characters in the story. As the crew navigates through improbable scenarios, Zaphod reveals that he is on a quest to find the legendary planet of Magrathea. Magrathea, as Ford explains, is a planet that was once immensely wealthy due to its production of custom-made luxury planets for the galaxy's elite. According to legend, the planet's inhabitants went into hibernation to wait out an economic downer, awaiting the day when their services would again be in demand. Most people believe that Magrathea is a myth, but Zaphod insists on finding it. Against all odds, they reach Magrathea, where they are greeted by the planet's automated defense system, which fires missiles at the Heart of Gold. Thanks to the infinite improbability drive, the missiles are improbably transformed into a bowl of petunias and a sperm whale, which plummet to the planet's surface. The whale's brief, existential musings as it hurtles toward its inevitable doom are a darkly funny aside, characteristic of Adams's absurdist humor. Upon landing, the crew splits up to explore. Arthur encounters a peculiar old man named Slardabart Fast, who explains that he was a planet designer responsible for the fjords of Norway. Slardabart Fast reveals that Magrathea has indeed been in hibernation, but has recently reawakened due to a new commission. Astonishingly, Arthur learns that this commission is for a new version of Earth, which was itself a product of Magrathian craftsmanship. Slartibartfast takes Arthur to a special viewing room and unveils a monumental revelation. Earth was an elaborate supercomputer designed to find the ultimate question to life, the universe, and everything. Millions of years ago, a race of hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings created a supercomputer named Deep Thought to calculate the answer to life, the universe, and everything. After 7.5 million years of computation, Deep Thought revealed the answer: 42. However, the beings then realized they did not know the actual question. To find it, they built Earth as a massive organic computer that would, over eons, uncover the question. Unfortunately, the program was interrupted when Earth was destroyed by the Vogons just 5 minutes before completion. Arthur is left grappling with the fact that his entire existence, and that of the human race, was merely part of a cosmic experiment. In a display of Adams's genius for dark humor, the ultimate question to existence remains tantalizingly unknown. Meanwhile, Zaphod, Ford, and Trillian face danger from the resurrected Magrathians. They are confronted by the two mice who had been living with Trillian as pets, but are, in fact, part of the hyper-intelligent beings who commissioned Earth's creation. The mice, eager to complete the experiment, plan to extract Arthur's brain, believing that it may contain fragments of the ultimate question. Thankfully, Arthur and his friends escape just in time, thwarting the mice's plan. In a final showdown, the Magrathians agree to let the crew go, and they return to the Heart of Gold. With no home planet to return to and no clear destination in mind, Arthur is left to contemplate the sheer strangeness of his new life as an intergalactic hitchhiker. His journey with Ford, Zaphod, Trillian, and Marvin is only beginning, and though he may never discover the purpose of life, the universe, and everything, he has learned to embrace the uncertainty. Adams's universe is one where meaning is arbitrary and answers are unsatisfyingly simple, as demonstrated by the infamous revelation that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is simply 42. The novel satirizes the human tendency to search for cosmic significance and ultimate answers, suggesting that existence may be inherently absurd, with no clear purpose beyond what individuals make of it. The Hitchhiker's Guide itself is a quirky and indispensable source of information, providing both practical tips and humorous commentary on the galaxy's oddities. In contrast, the Vogons represent the dangers of bureaucratic efficiency devoid of compassion. Adams lampoons both ends of the technological spectrum, portraying humanity's reliance on machines and the potential for technology to strip life of meaning and joy. Through characters like Marvin, who represents the bleakness of a life without agency or purpose, Adams explores existentialist themes. Marvin's extreme pessimism contrasts with Zaphod's impulsive, carefree attitude, raising questions about free will and determinism. Arthur, initially a passive character, learns to adapt and survive, embodying the novel's message that life's uncertainties should be met with curiosity and humor. Despite the vastness and loneliness of space, Arthur finds companionship with Ford, Trillian, and the eccentric crew of the Heart of Gold. Their bond is based on shared experiences, even as they bicker and confront dangers. Through their interactions, Adams celebrates the value of friendship in an otherwise indifferent universe. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a unique blend of science fiction, comedy, and philosophical satire, using absurd humor and existential reflection to question the nature of life itself. Arthur's journey from an ordinary Englishman to a reluctant intergalactic traveler reflects humanity's struggle to find meaning in an increasingly complex world. With unforgettable characters, surreal humor, and a storyline that veers in unexpected directions, Adams's novel remains a classic exploration of the absurdities and wonders of the universe. In the end, Arthur may not find the answers he seeks, but he learns to face the unknown with resilience, curiosity, and a sense of humor, a lesson that is perhaps the best any of us can hope for in an unpredictable universe. Imagine a small, sleepy town in the deep South during the Great Depression, a place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are as much a part of life as the sweltering summer heat. This is Macomb, Alabama, the setting of Harper Lee's timeless novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. Through the innocent eyes of a young girl named Scout Finch, we're invited into a world teetering on the edge of change, where the simple joys of childhood collide with the stark realities of prejudice and injustice. Scout, whose real name is Jean Louise Finch, lives with her older brother Jim and their widowed father Atticus, a principled lawyer with a steadfast moral compass. Their home is a modest, cozy abode on the main residential street of Macomb, where oak trees whisper in the wind and the front porches are stages for nightly conversations. The Finch household is warm and nurturing, filled with books, laughter, and the gentle guidance of Atticus, who treats his children with a respect uncommon for the era. Summer brings a new friend into their lives, Dill Harris, a curious and imaginative boy from Mississippi who spends his vacations with his Aunt Rachel next door. The trio becomes inseparable, their days filled with adventures and playful schemes. But one mystery captivates them above all else: the enigmatic figure of Arthur Boo Radley, their reclusive neighbor who hasn't been seen outside his dilapidated house in years. Whispers among the townsfolk paint Boo as a spectral figure, a source of fear and fascination for the children. They spin tales about him, daring each other to get closer to the Radley place, hoping for just a glimpse of the phantom within. As the seasons change, strange gifts begin to appear in the knothole of a tree on the Radley property. Small tokens like carved soap figures, pennies, and gum. Scout and Jim realize that someone is trying to communicate with them, perhaps even Boo himself. These silent offerings ignite their imaginations and slowly chip away at the monstrous image they've built of their mysterious neighbor. Amidst these childhood escapades, Atticus emerges as a beacon of wisdom and compassion. One day, he gives Scout and Jim air rifles, but imparts a crucial lesson. It's a sin to kill a mockingbird. Perplexed, the children seek clarity from Miss Maudie, their kindly neighbor. She explains that mockingbirds do nothing but provide joy with their songs, harming no one, a metaphor that will resonate profoundly as events unfold. Life in Macomb takes a serious turn when Atticus is appointed to defend Tom Robinson, a black man falsely accused of raping Mela Ewell, a white woman from the town's poorest family. The case grips the community, stirring deep-seated prejudices and setting the stage for a confrontation between justice and bigotry. Despite facing scorn and hostility, Atticus stands firm in his commitment to the truth, embodying the very principles he strives to instill in his children. The trial becomes the focal point of the narrative, a tense and emotionally charged episode that exposes the ugly underbelly of Macomb's societal norms. Scout, Jim, and Dill secretly watch from the colored balcony, absorbing every word and nuance. In the courtroom, Atticus methodically dismantles the prosecution's case. He reveals that Miela's injuries were inflicted by someone left-handed, pointing out that Tom's left arm is crippled, rendering him physically incapable of the crime. Atticus suggests that Bob Ewell, Miela's father and a left-handed man, is the true perpetrator, having beaten his daughter upon discovering her advances toward Tom. Despite the compelling evidence and Atticus's impassioned plea for justice, the all-white jury delivers a guilty verdict. The weight of this injustice crushes Jem, who had believed in the inherent fairness of the legal system. It's a harsh awakening to the realities of their world, a moment that shatters the innocence of childhood. In the aftermath, the town grapples with the repercussions. Tom Robinson, losing hope for an appeal, attempts to escape from prison and is tragically shot dead. The news devastates Atticus and further disillusions Jem and Scout. Meanwhile, Bob Ewell seethes with humiliation and vows revenge against those who exposed his lies. He harasses Tom's widow, menaces Judge Taylor, and spits in Atticus's face, a display of cowardice met with Atticus's unwavering composure. As Halloween approaches, Maycomb hosts a pageant celebrating the town's agricultural heritage. Scout is assigned to play a ham, a bulky costume that restricts her vision and mobility. After the festivities, Scout and Jem begin their trek home under the cloak of darkness. The night is thick with the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves, an atmosphere ripe with foreboding. Suddenly, they are attacked by an unseen assailant. In the chaos, Jem is knocked unconscious, and Scout, trapped in her costume, struggles to comprehend what's happening. Out of the shadows, a mysterious figure intervenes, rescuing them from the clutches of danger. The attacker is revealed to be Bob Ewell, who lies dead from a knife wound. Back at their house, Scout finally meets her savior, a pale, silent man with gentle eyes. It's Boo Radley, the very neighbor who had been the subject of so many of their childhood fears and fantasies. Sheriff Hectate arrives and, understanding the situation, insists that Bob Ewell fell on his own knife. He aims to protect Boo from the public scrutiny that would inevitably follow the truth. Atticus initially resists, wanting to uphold the law above all else, but Scout, wise beyond her years, gently tells her father that exposing Boo would be like killing a mockingbird. She recognizes the profound innocence and goodness in Boo, mirroring the very lesson Atticus had taught them. In the quiet moments that follow, Scout walks Boo back to his home. Standing on his porch, she sees her world from a new perspective, literally and figuratively. It's a poignant realization of empathy, as she steps into Boo's shoes and understands his life of solitude and observation. The boundaries between myth and reality dissolve, leaving her with a deeper comprehension of humanity. Throughout the narrative, the characters evolve in profound ways. Scout transforms from a feisty, impulsive child into a thoughtful and perceptive young girl. Her journey is marked by the lessons she learns about prejudice, courage, and understanding. Jem grapples with disillusionment, struggling to reconcile his ideals with the harsh truths he witnesses. Dill confronts the complexities of morality and injustice, his innocence challenged by the events of the trial. At the heart of it all is Atticus Finch, a paragon of virtue who stands tall against the tides of ignorance and hatred. His unwavering commitment to justice and equality sets the moral framework of the story. He teaches his children, not just through words but through actions, the importance of empathy and standing up for what is right, even when faced with overwhelming opposition. Boo Radley, once a phantom of the children's imaginations, emerges as a symbol of misunderstood kindness. His actions reveal a silent guardian who watches over Scout and Jem, protecting them in the only ways he knows how. His character challenges the prejudgments and fears that can cloud perception, emphasizing the novel's theme of looking beyond the surface. The themes woven into the fabric of To Kill a Mockingbird are as relevant today as they were when the book was first published. The story confronts the brutal realities of racism and inequality, exposing how deeply these issues are ingrained in society. It questions the morality of a community that allows injustice to prevail under the guise of tradition and conformity. The mockingbird itself serves as a powerful symbol throughout the novel, representing innocence destroyed by evil. Characters like Tom Robinson and Boo Radley embody this symbolism, as they are harmed by the very society they are part of despite having done nothing but good. The narrative urges readers to consider the consequences of prejudice and to recognize the humanity in others. The setting of Maycomb is more than just a backdrop. It's a character in its own right. The town's dusty roads, ramshackle houses, and tight-knit community create an atmosphere that is both charming and suffocating. The slow pace of life contrasts sharply with the intensity of the events that unfold, highlighting the tensions lurking beneath the surface of everyday existence. As the story concludes, Scout reflects on the lessons learned and the people who have shaped her understanding of the world. Standing on the Radley porch, she contemplates the interconnectedness of their lives and the profound impact of empathy. It's a moment of quiet revelation, a recognition that true courage and goodness often reside where we least expect them. To Kill a Mockingbird is a tale that resonates on multiple levels. It's a coming-of-age story, a social commentary, and a poignant exploration of morality. Through its rich characters and compelling narrative, it invites us to examine our own beliefs and the society we live in. The novel doesn't offer easy answers, but encourages a continual quest for understanding and justice. In the end, the story leaves us with a sense of hope that through compassion and integrity, change is possible. It reminds us that, like Scout, we must be willing to see the world through others' eyes, to walk in their shoes, and to stand up against injustice wherever it may arise. As we close the pages on Maycomb and its inhabitants, the echoes of their experiences linger, urging us to carry forward the lessons of empathy, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of what is right. To Kill a Mockingbird isn't just a story from a bygone era. It's a mirror reflecting the ongoing challenges we face and a call to action for each generation to make the world a more just and compassionate place. Imagine the rolling hills and quaint villages of early 19th century England, where manners and marriage dictate the rhythm of life. In this world of ballrooms and bonnets resides the Bennet family, nestled in the modest estate of Longbourn in the rural county of Hertfordshire. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet have 5 daughters, each with her own charm and challenge. But the family faces a pressing dilemma. The estate is entailed to a distant male cousin, leaving the daughters' futures precarious unless they make advantageous marriages. The story unfolds with the electrifying news that a wealthy bachelor, Mr. Charles Bingley, has rented nearby Netherfield Park. Mrs. Bennet is ecstatic, a potential suitor for one of her girls. Accompanied by his haughty friend Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy and his snobbish sisters, Bingley arrives, setting the local society abuzz. At a lively country ball, the Bennet family is introduced to these newcomers. Jane Bennet, the eldest and most beautiful sister, catches Bingley's eye, sparking an immediate and mutual attraction. Elizabeth Bennet, the second eldest, is intelligent, witty, and possesses a sharp tongue. She observes Mr. Darcy, whose proud demeanor and reluctance to engage with the local company earn him the label of arrogance. When she overhears Darcy dismissing her as tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, a seed of disdain is planted in her heart. As days turn into weeks, Bingley's affection for Jane deepens. He visits Longbourn frequently, and their chemistry is undeniable. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's initial dislike for Darcy is reinforced during their interactions. His reserved nature and aloof behavior contrast sharply with her playful spirit. Yet, beneath Darcy's cold exterior lies a growing admiration for Elizabeth's wit and fine eyes, an internal struggle he strives to suppress due to her lower social standing. Enter Mr. William Collins, the pompous clergyman cousin set to inherit Longbourn. He arrives with the absurd intention of marrying one of the Bennet sisters to ease the entailment blow. His obsequious manners and incessant praise of his patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, render him laughable. After Jane is deemed likely to be engaged soon, Collins sets his sights on Elizabeth. His proposal is comically unbearable, and Elizabeth flatly rejects him, much to her mother's horror and her father's amusement. Amidst this, the Bennet sisters befriend the charming Lieutenant George Wickham, a militia officer stationed nearby. Wickham shares with Elizabeth a tale of woe, claiming that Darcy denied him a promised inheritance. This account cements Elizabeth's poor opinion of Darcy, painting him as cruel and unjust. The plot thickens when Bingley abruptly leaves for London, leaving Jane heartbroken and bewildered. Elizabeth learns that Darcy and Bingley's sisters orchestrated the separation, deeming the Bennet family unsuitable due to their lack of wealth and improper behavior, often exhibited by the frivolous youngest sisters, Kitty and Lydia, and their imprudent mother. In the wake of these events, Mr. Collins hastily proposes to Elizabeth's close friend, Charlotte Lucas, who accepts for pragmatic reasons, valuing security over romance. Elizabeth is shocked but tries to be supportive. She later visits Charlotte at her new home, where she encounters Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy's wealthy and domineering aunt. Unexpectedly, Darcy arrives at his aunt's estate, Rosings Park, bringing the two into frequent contact. During these encounters, Darcy's admiration for Elizabeth intensifies. Unable to contain his feelings, he proposes to her in a tumultuous declaration that highlights his struggles against his better judgment due to her inferior social standing. Offended by his insult-laden confession and furious over his role in separating Jane and Bingley, as well as his mistreatment of Wickham, Elizabeth vehemently rejects him. She accuses him of arrogance, selfishness, and unfeeling actions. Stung but composed, Darcy pens a heartfelt letter to Elizabeth the next day. In it, he addresses her accusations. He admits to influencing Bingley out of concern that Jane's affections were not genuine, and he reveals Wickham's true character, a gambler and a scoundrel who attempted to elope with Darcy's young sister, Georgiana, to gain her fortune. This revelation shakes Elizabeth's convictions, forcing her to reevaluate her judgments. Elizabeth embarks on a journey with her aunt and uncle, the Gardiners, which leads them to Pemberley, Darcy's magnificent estate. Believing Darcy to be away, they tour the opulent grounds. Elizabeth is struck by the grandeur and the high regard the staff have for their master. Unexpectedly, Darcy returns, and their encounter is markedly different. He is gracious and attentive, extending hospitality to her relatives without a hint of snobbery. The arrival of news that Lydia, the youngest Bennet's sister, has eloped with Wickham sends Elizabeth into a panic. Such a scandal could ruin the family's reputation irreparably. She confides in Darcy, whose demeanor shifts to one of concern and urgency. Feeling responsible for not exposing Wickham sooner, Darcy departs abruptly. Back home, the Bennet family is in disarray. Mr. Bennet searches for Lydia to prevent disaster, but to no avail. Just when all seems lost, news arrives that Lydia and Wickham will marry, thanks to an unknown benefactor who settled Wickham's debts and provided a financial incentive. The family rejoices, albeit with lingering shame over the impropriety. Elizabeth soon learns that Darcy was the mysterious savior who orchestrated the marriage, acting out of love for her. This act of profound generosity and humility astonishes her, further dissolving her prejudices. Meanwhile, Bingley returns to Netherfield and rekindles his courtship with Jane. Free from Darcy's intervention and now confident in Jane's affections, he proposes, and she joyfully accepts. Their union brings happiness to the Bennet household. However, tranquility is short-lived. Lady Catherine de Bourgh arrives at Longbourn, outraged by rumors of Darcy's interest in Elizabeth. She demands that Elizabeth renounce any claim to him, insisting that he is intended for her own daughter. Elizabeth refuses, asserting her right to make her own choices. This confrontation signals to Darcy that Elizabeth's feelings may have softened. Emboldened, Darcy returns to Longbourn and proposes once more. This time, Elizabeth accepts, expressing her gratitude for his patience and her regret over her earlier misconceptions. Their mutual understanding and respect have blossomed into deep love. The novel concludes with the marriages of Jane to Bingley and Elizabeth to Darcy, symbolizing the triumph of love and understanding over pride and prejudice. The once disparaged Bennet family now has secure futures for their daughters, and the characters have grown immensely through their trials. Elizabeth Bennet emerges as a heroine ahead of her time, intelligent, assertive, and unwilling to compromise her principles. Her journey is one of self-discovery, learning to look beyond first impressions and acknowledge her own biases. Her sharp observations often serve as both social commentary and a defense mechanism against the limitations placed on women of her era. Mr. Darcy transforms from a figure of prideful aloofness to one of humility and integrity. His initial arrogance masks a deep-seated shyness and a strict adherence to social propriety. Elizabeth's rejection becomes the catalyst for his introspection and change. He learns to value sincerity and warmth over status and decorum. Supporting characters like Jane Bennet and Mr. Bingley represent the ideal of pure-heartedness. Jane's inability to see the flaws in others is both her strength and her vulnerability, while Bingley's affable nature makes him susceptible to manipulation. Their straightforward love story contrasts with the complexity of Elizabeth and Darcy's relationship. Mr. Collins and Lady Catherine de Bourgh embody the absurdities of rigid social structures. Collins's sycophantic behavior and Lady Catherine's domineering interference highlight the oppressive expectations of class and the ridicule that can accompany blind adherence to them. Wickham serves as a foil to Darcy, a charming exterior hiding a duplicitous nature. His actions propel the plot and force characters to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and others. Pride and Prejudice intricately weaves themes of social class, reputation, marriage, and personal growth. The title itself encapsulates the central conflicts. Darcy's pride in his status and Elizabeth's prejudice against him cloud their judgments. The novel critiques the societal pressures that prioritize advantageous marriages over genuine affection. Through the varied marriages depicted, based on convenience, passion, or mutual respect, Austen explores the foundations of successful partnerships. Social class and mobility are examined through the interactions between characters of different standings. The rigid class distinctions dictate behavior and opportunities, often leading to misunderstandings and injustices. The importance of self-awareness and personal growth is paramount. Both Elizabeth and Darcy must confront their flaws to find happiness. Their evolution underscores the value of looking beyond surface appearances and societal expectations. The rural English countryside provides a picturesque backdrop that contrasts with the bustling city life of London and the grandeur of estates like Pemberley. The settings reflect the characters' inner worlds. Longbourn's modest comfort mirrors the Bennet family situation, while Pemberley's splendor represents Darcy's wealth and the potential for Elizabeth's expanded horizons. The social gatherings, from intimate dinners to grand balls, create atmospheres ripe with tension, romance, and societal observation. These events are stages where characters reveal their true selves, often unintentionally. Austen's keen attention to detail paints a vivid picture of the era, the fashion, the etiquette, the unspoken rules, all of which immerse the reader in the time period. The juxtaposition of the characters' personal desires against the constraints of their environment heightens the emotional stakes. The novel elicits a spectrum of emotions: amusement at witty exchanges, frustration at societal injustices, joy at romantic fulfillments, and anxiety during moments of crisis. Elizabeth's journey resonates as she navigates love, family obligations, and personal integrity. The tension between Elizabeth and Darcy is masterfully crafted, with each interaction layered with subtext. Their miscommunications and eventual understanding create a satisfying emotional arc. The scandal of Lydia's elopement introduces fear and despair, highlighting the precariousness of women's reputations. The resolution of this subplot brings relief, but also underscores the sacrifices made to maintain social standing. Pride and Prejudice endures as a timeless exploration of love, society, and the human condition. Jane Austen's sharp wit and deep empathy create a story that is both a product of its time and universally relatable. The characters' transformations encourage readers to reflect on their own prejudices and the societal structures that influence behavior. The novel champions the idea that true understanding and connection come from looking beyond external factors, wealth, status, first impressions, and valuing honesty, kindness, and personal growth. Elizabeth and Darcy's union symbolizes the breaking down of barriers, both personal and societal. As we leave the world of Hertfordshire and its inhabitants, we're reminded of the power of self-reflection and the courage it takes to challenge one's own beliefs. Pride and Prejudice invites us to consider how pride and prejudice manifest in our own lives and how love and understanding can overcome them.